welcome to the Modern Homesteading Podcast. This is your host, Rachel Jameson. Today, I am here with Sonya Boone of Dave and Sonya in Michigan. Welcome to the show, Sonya.
Hi, Rachel. Thanks for having us.
I had you last year on too, so I will put a link in the show notes of our first interview of you and your husband together.
Right.
Because you guys have your own stuff that you're doing on social media and a blog and all that stuff. And why don't you share a little bit about what you do before we get into the topic of freeze drying?
Sure. So we initially started all of our stuff because we built a 7x14 cargo trailer that we converted into an off-grid tiny house. And we do a bunch of traveling with that. And we teach emergency preparedness type skills, homesteading, kind of anything related to being more self-sufficient. And so we have on our homestead, we are on just over 5 acres. We raise ducks, chickens, quails, turkeys, and we just added coon pigs. So we've got our hands full on what we're doing. So we kind of share, anything and everything related to homesteading and being more self-sufficient.
Okay. Yeah.
So,
and you have your grandkids there a lot.
We do have them a little bit of time to help with them, and they get to help around here. So it's really exciting.
Yeah, and you're also like a phenomenal baker. I've seen a lot of your cakes and stuff that you do, so you're pretty well versed in the kitchen.
Yep, about 32 years of professional baking. So
yeah. So then, how many years ago did you decide that you were going to jump on this whole freeze dry thing?
Well, I initially saw them probably, 15 years ago, maybe 20 years ago. And I thought it was really cool, but super pricey.
Yeah.
Like super pricey. And I always, you try astronaut food and I was like, oh, it's okay, And then my daughter she's celiac. And they were doing these hiking trips in mountain house and stuff. Imagine 15, 20 years ago, it was hard to find that kind of stuff. So I started searching out, how can I feed my kid? When they're in the mountains for a week or 10 days, they can't be sick. And you can only do so many macro or tuna fish and that kind of stuff.
Right.
And so I really started just researching it and was on I think back then it was the groups on email where you could learn about
the Yahoo groups.
Yahoo groups, yeah.
I was just telling somebody I missed those today.
Yeah, and so I was just learning, and David had gotten a bonus, and a really nice bonus, and he'd come home and he's like, "Hey, I got this really nice bonus." He goes, "Do you want that freeze dryer now?" And I was like, "Oh yeah," And I hadn't really looked at the prices; they really hadn't gone down that much, and I was like, that's a car. If our car dies or crashes or whatever, that's a car. And I kind of was like, a car or a freeze dryer? Well, of course, the car is priority. So we waited on it. And by then, Facebook groups were starting to take off, and I, researching it some more, learning some things. And I saw this lady on there, and she said, "Oh yeah, my husband doesn't like the noise of them, and it heats up our house, so I don't use it very much." And so I'm like, "Oh, any chance you'd want to sell this thing?" She said, "Yeah." And I'm like, "No way." And so anyways, I'm like, "Well, where are you at?" And I think she was down in Indiana or Illinois, somewhere. Anyways, it was 9 hours away. And so we talked about a price, and I'm like, wow, it's still expensive, but the price had come down significantly. She says, the only thing is she goes, "I've got to be out of town this weekend, and I might change my mind. So if you want it, get on it." Anyways, we ended up driving 9 hours, drove through the night. I had to cut a wedding cake. I not forgotten, but I thought I just had to deliver it. So I'm rechecking over my information. I'm like, oh crap, I got to stay to cut this cake. So we ended up leaving after I cut the cake, drove all night to go pick up this machine. And the lady, she was one of those ones that you go big or go home. So she had all the extra pans, all the bags.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I mean, basically gave it to us. I mean, we stole it. We did pay for it, but it's pricey.
Right. Yeah.
And so I had done quite a bit of research, like the basics, like how do you do this? How do you do that? But it's still a learning curve. Like you can't just throw stuff in there and be like, oh, it's done. You have to make sure everything's dry, rotating your trays, that kind of stuff. So that's been, I think, about 5 years now.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So that's kind of how we got our machine.
And you still have the same one.
Same machine, yep. And on my machine, which I use the Harvest Right, that one has been around, I mean, years. They've been around.
Okay, so that gets me to like why you chose that brand. I know you found it used, but
Yeah,
I know
well,
that you like it enough at this point that you actually are like an affiliate for them.
we are an affiliate, yeah.
So
And
you're very happy with that brand.
I am. But I don't, there are a couple other brands that are newer to the market. When I was researching it, that Harvest Right was the only one that was available. I think there was like super big commercial ones. I could
Okay.
never touch that.
Right.
So everything that I was reading on was the Harvest Right. And if you dig deep enough, you're going to see people bash it. They're going to have issues. They're going to have whatever. But anything, a car can have problems.
Right. Yeah.
So I can only go by my experience. And again, I bought my machine used. There is a little counter on it so you can tell like how many hours it's been run. But my
Okay,
husband's,
that's good to know.
yeah, but my husband's mechanical. So I figured if there's anything weird on the machine, he can fix it. And so, but we didn't have any problems. We ran it. And I think ours came with the standard pump that came with it. And I think I ran it for a year or two after that. And it just got where I don't remember exactly what happened with it, but I was having to change the oil more often. And
Okay.
so David looked into doing something. So we ended up buying the upgraded pump, I think. Motor
Okay.
pump. It was a pump. Just so we don't have to change the oil as often, because before you were doing it like every load or every other load.
Okay. Well,
And so
do you wanna I'm sorry I interrupted you.
no, that's okay.
I was wondering before we started talking about the pump and the oil,
Yeah.
if you wanted to talk about what the difference between freeze drying, canning, and dehydrating is, because I know a lot of people, I see that question asked a lot, and people ask a lot, like, what is the difference? Why would I want a freeze dryer as opposed to a dehydrator, especially a dehydrator? And then, yeah, and then you can talk about the sizes and the oil and stuff.
So I still use and I do all three methods. So it really depends on what I'm doing. I used to be anything and everything I could can. And there's still things that are my favorite. Like I like canning chicken versus, and I mean, I've got some canned chicken here. I don't know if you can see this too good, but this was just like the rotisserie chicken. It's shredded and then freeze dried.
Oh,
But
okay.
the texture, it's just a different texture. So a lot of it is our personal preference. The one thing with canning is because of the higher heat temperature, nutritionally, you're going to burn up more canning than you would like if you're going to dehydrate or you're going to freeze.
Yeah, for sure.
Like for my bone broths and stuff, I still can a lot of it because it's quick. I can just dump it right into whatever I'm going to eat or heat it up. With dehydrating, there's things like I couldn't, if I were to throw apples into a canning jar, the texture of those are going to be different than if I dehydrate them. So like when you dehydrate, you're familiar with like apples. If you dehydrate apples, they're kind of, okay. So then if I were to freeze dry them, they're going to be like these are freeze dried apples. Can you see these?
Yes, I can. They're beautiful. They look beautiful.
Yeah. And so the texture of these are going to be different than the texture of like a dehydrated apple. So like, I don't know if you can see this and hear it.
I didn't hear it.
You did or did not?
I did not. That's interesting that I couldn't hear that.
Did you hear the cracking?
Hopefully people can hear that. I can hear it lightly. Yeah.
So it's very similar to like a Cheeto, like when you crunch a Cheeto. So
Yeah.
it's just a different texture. Nutritionally, I'd have to do my home, pull out my notes for my homework. Um, I believe with freeze drying, it's like 96, 97% nutritional value is kept in your food.
Oh, nice.
And I know that dehydrating is very similar as long as you keep your temperature lower.
Right.
But like, so the difference between like if I were to throw grapes in here to make juice, that texture that comes out. If I throw grapes into my dehydrator, I'm going to get raisins. If I
Yes.
throw grapes into my freeze dryer, I'm going to get grapes that have this crunch, so they don't turn into raisins. So it's kind
Right.
of the other thing is if I were to throw, I don't have any canned meat here, but if I were to throw, let's say, a piece of steak into a canning jar, I'm going to get that nice soft texture.
Right.
If I throw jerky into my dehydrator, I'm going to get that nice pliable, right? If I
Yeah.
freeze dry it, I'm going to get dry, crunchy. I'm not going to
Okay.
get jerky. So
Okay.
again, it's just depending on what I'm going to do. I can't make fruit roll-ups in my freeze dryer
Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah.
because if you saw how that apple crunched,
Yeah.
you're going to get a powder coming out of the freeze dryer.
But you
So
probably
it's
make some
just
great fruit powders for like smoothies or
amazing.
something. Yeah.
Amazing. So it's kind of like the tools in your toolbox. It just depends on like what do you want to use it for. I'll have my canner going. I've got my dehydrator. So it just depends.
That
Um,
makes sense. That makes total sense.
yeah. And then also I don't know if you can see this or not, but these are dehydrated. Can you see the peas, how they have like the
Yes.
khaki color? Can you see the difference in that color? Mm.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So then I put them together.
Oh, okay. Interesting. That is a
Now,
really different color.
the dehydrated ones would take longer to use up. So like if you needed to use these up, there's a lot more planning with these because they have to be soaked or it takes longer to prepare your meal. You can If
Okay.
you were to open these up and put it in your mouth, it's like eating a dry bean, like a dry bean you store in your cupboard. These you can actually eat as is. So you can pop them in your mouth and eat them. And so for like children, they can eat these green beans and they're getting basically raw food.
That's cool.
Yeah. So it really just depends. And then corn, similar, if you can see
Yeah, I do a lot of dehydrating and I've never dehydrated peas, but the corn, yeah, there's definitely a difference in color and the appearance of texture too. And
and when it comes back.
I think a lot of people have now, it used to be very few people had had freeze-dried food, but it has kind of become common. Even the dollar store
Yes.
has like these little bags I've bought them
Fruit.
myself of like fruit,
Yep.
apples.
Yep.
Yeah, and you just that texture, it's amazing. They taste so good.
Yep.
So the other thing besides the flavor and the texture difference would be storability, right? The amount of time that all of these are stored.
Yeah.
So can
Um,
you talk about that?
I I haven't done like any studies per se on these. I don't even know. I don't have a date on these when I did these. Um, and these I primarily use just as examples, the ones that are dehydrated. From my understanding, the freeze-dried stuff can last up to 25 years.
Okay.
I don't keep things that long. I mean, I've only been doing
Right.
this for about 5. So, but like freeze-dried, if I were to do freeze-dried steak, I could throw that in my cupboard and it could last forever. If I do jerky, I have to keep that in my refrigerator. Fruit
Okay.
roll-ups, yeah, fruit roll-ups I have to
Yep.
keep in the refrigerator. They just don't, I mean, you can add some
Yeah.
like mold inhibitors. That's just more crap in there that I don't want to add.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah.
yeah,
And canned goods are what, like a year to 18 months or something like that if you canned meat. Yeah.
yeah. So it just depends on what your goals are, what you're doing.
Okay. And
Yeah.
then how do you store yours? Yeah, I see that you had in the you were showing me glass jars for those that are listening. You were showing
Yeah.
me that you had probably vacuum sealed yours in glass jars.
Yeah. And then we
What
also
else?
do, I don't know if you can see these Mylar bags.
Okay, so you also do the Mylar bags.
Yeah. Well, we don't do them a ton because I hate the waste of it. But like this one is gluten-free macaroni and cheese.
Oh yeah.
Again, so that when Paige travels,
Yeah.
something like this is small. She can tuck this into her suitcase, or if she's hiking, whatever she's doing. So we do try to, like we'll think ahead. Do you have anything coming up in the next 3 months? If we're going to make a batch of macaroni and cheese up, it's one full load, so it's 10 pounds. And then
Okay.
I will put up, like this. We'll do some in jars just so that we can make a family meal. Yeah, it just depends. Most of the stuff I do in jars because I can recycle, I can just keep reusing them.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's primarily what we do is the jars, but I do use the Mylar bags too. So,
Okay. So since you're talking about like macaroni and cheese and peas and corn, is there anything that can't be freeze dried? Do you
jerky.
freeze jerky?
Well, jerky doesn't turn into jerky, it
Yeah.
turns into powder. Some things that are like high sugar will, I call it, have a little party in there. I'm not sure exactly what happens, but it really explodes. I just did a load of bananas they would be good for like baking banana bread.
Okay.
And I kind of rushed the process and didn't freeze them fully first because that helps cut down on your explosions in there. Once it hits the vacuum in there, it starts to pull the vacuum. They get real foamy in there. So
Interesting. Okay.
yeah, and like Jill did, what did she do? Some kind of a bone broth or something that was really gelatinous. And my first instinct was that's going to make a mess in there. And I think it did, or it didn't, something
Okay.
didn't turn
Okay.
out right. So a lot of times if you dilute it down, it doesn't, I don't know if it's just because it is diluted that it doesn't have the party in there. So like I've tried to do, we had a wedding that we went to and I made Jello shots and we had some Jello shots left over. And so I thought, well, I'll freeze dry those because those will be cool little cubes, that you could just pop in your mouth. And I mean, I think it had vodka in it, which they freeze dried.
Interesting.
But
Interesting. I did not even think about that.
yeah. And so, I mean, it's just like weird stuff like that. What can't I do?
Okay. So you've done liquids and broth and stuff before.
Oh yeah. And
Okay.
the bone broth is amazing, but I do find that the one bone broth must have had a lot of collagen in it or something because it was when it got cold, it was like jello, like solid jello chunks versus
Interesting.
where some bone broths are looser. I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Not
I mean,
as,
yeah, if you've made bone broth, I mean, even when you're making it normally, it has different consistencies just
yeah.
depending. Yeah.
Yeah. So what a lot of times if I'm not sure on what something's going to do, we call it try-its. So I just have little silicone molds that hold like half a cup of product in it. So I'll pre-freeze it and then I just turn them out into little pucks. And when I've got enough of those pucks to do one tray, I just freeze dry them and I try it and I see what is it going to do.
Well, let's talk about that. We'll get into the maintenance. I definitely want to get into that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that. So what is the process for freeze drying? It's like how many trays does yours have? And like how big are the trays? And then what is your process for, say, what's something that somebody does a lot of freeze drying of? I don't know what people like to do for freeze drying. I've seen lots of candy.
Yeah. We do a lot of fruit.
Okay.
Bananas, apples, strawberries. Trying to think, we did a bunch of blackberries. Really anything that I can grow or get on sale, then I'll freeze dry it. My medium, it's an older model, but it has 4 trays in there. You can hold 2.5 pounds of food per tray.
Okay.
So it's either 2.5 pounds or to the top of the tray, but the top of the tray is only about an inch tall.
Okay.
So of course you wouldn't be able to put 2 pounds of spinach in there, right? Because the volume.
Right. Yes.
So it's either 2.5 pounds or to the top of that tray.
Okay.
Yeah. So then you would just some things you can pre-freeze, like tomatoes. I can pre-freeze those and I can do those in the wintertime. So
Okay.
typically anything like if you're going to prepare it for your freezer, that's how you would prepare it for your freeze dryer.
So you
So
blanch it.
yes, like green
Okay.
beans, I would blanch, asparagus, I would blanch. Anything you're going to blanch to throw in the freezer, that's the way that I treat it for the freeze dryer,
Okay.
except for like fresh peppers. Fresh peppers you can do, onions you can do.
Okay.
Um,
So do you pre-freeze meat or do you just you can put meat in there raw?
you can put it in there raw too. So it
Okay.
just like David's got our machine kind of MacGyvered where if I don't, and I don't know that all the machines do it, and I don't suggest anybody monkey with the machines unless you know what you're doing. So
Okay.
he's got a switch on ours that if I put stuff in there that's not pre-frozen, let's see, I don't draw the vacuum first. I let it, yeah, because if you draw the, yeah. Anyways, he's got a system on there that if it's already pre-frozen, I just put them in there, hit the switch to run. If it's not pre-frozen, I turn the vacuum off, let the machine do the work, freezing it, and then it automatically cycles by itself.
Okay.
Now,
But if you didn't have it MacGyvered, does it do that?
the new machines now have 5 trays. I think
Okay.
they have the mediums now. Um, but I think it's 5 trays, and I think it's like 12 pounds of food.
Okay.
So the new machines, I tell people, I haven't seen the manual yet for the new one. Jill sent me the manual. I should look through hers. Just to kind of see, what does it look like the newer one? Basically it's the same thing. It's really a push. You just hit start and you just let the machine work. A lot of people
Okay.
will get the machine and they try to jimmy it or they want to make shortcuts on it. And I tell people, people that design these machines, they designed them. They know what they're doing. Don't get in there and try to monkey with it because then that's where we get the user errors. People think
Okay.
the other thing that people want to do is the inside of the machine has a chamber that the ice will collect from the water being taken out of there, and they want to rush the process. So they call it piggybacking the loads. So instead of letting the machine thaw out, they'll try to throw another load right in there. So it just causes a big mess, and all that extra ice, you don't need it. So we just tell people make sure read your manual, follow the manual.
Okay.
So, and from my understanding, the new models for those that want to do candy, they've got a different button you can push on there, and it only takes like a couple hours to freeze dry versus uh, a couple days.
Yeah. So that's something I didn't think to ask. So how long
Yeah.
you're talking, depending on what the material is, and I'm assuming depending on
Yep.
how wet and dense the material is, it takes longer.
Correct.
So candy doesn't
Yeah.
take as long, say, as if a steak.
No, no, it's roughly about 36 to 40-ish hours.
Okay.
I did fresh pineapple one time, and I was like, I ain't never doing this again. It was like 4 days.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, because it's pretty moisture dense. I mean, I've got a little meter that I can kind of go over it and stuff, and it's still, I'm not sure. And then if and then little things too, like things with seeds in it, strawberries,
Okay.
lemons, oranges, anything like that, just add a little bit more time to make sure everything's completely dry.
Okay. Now you just mentioned something about a meter. Is that something is there like a moisture meter or something that you can test to make sure things are dry?
Well, we're kind of just playing with it. It's like one of those wood meters, so you can kind of see where you're at. The other thing that you can do, I don't know exactly what it's called, and I don't know if it's 100% accurate, but I have something to gauge by. The other thing that you can do too is you can pull your trays out. You listen like for that snap,
Okay.
but the other thing too that you can do is you can pull your trays out and you weigh it.
That's what I was going to ask you if you weigh it
Yeah.
before and after so you can tell.
I
Okay.
wait until I'm at the very end where I think, everything's snapping good, nothing's cold. So you can weigh it and then you throw it back into the machine for about an hour. You pull it back out. And if those numbers aren't changing. And when I do it like that, I go into grams because it's more precise. And as
Yes.
long as I'm not getting any change from there, I'm dry. I know I'm dry.
Okay. Okay.
So yeah,
And
it's
then
just little things.
when you vacuum seal these, do you put a moisture packet in there with it?
Oxygen absorber.
Oxygen over. Okay.
Yep. For whether I'm doing jars or the Mylar bags. I don't have a chamber vac, so I'm not vacuum sealing the Mylar
Okay.
bags. And I don't 100% know if you absolutely need to do it because they're not telling you to do that when you use the Mylar
Right,
bags.
right, right. Okay.
So I don't know 100% if it has to be done when you do the jars. My thinking is it's a guess. That's one of those things that can deteriorate your food. I have the tool. So to me, it takes me a couple seconds to pop that oxygen out of, pop that thing on the jar.
Yeah.
So it's just one of those things that I've got the tools. I'm going to use it.
Yeah, those are
So
super handy to have anyway to
yeah,
a jar sealer. They're
yeah. And so that's just, I mean, that's what I do. And I've never had any problems when I've done the Mylar, with
okay.
my food. And again, it's only, and I don't know if I got anything that's 5 years old. I don't think I have anything that's 5 years old. But I haven't had any problems with the Mylar. So
Okay.
you probably have to just try it and see what works best for you.
So do you guys eat this regularly then? I'm gonna assume you do.
I don't like, not necessarily like meal, like I don't do a meal every night with it, but I use a lot of my herbs.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
like last night I had fried rice and I didn't have any fresh frozen corn or whatever it was. Like, yeah, fresh frozen corn and peas. So I just went to my drawer, grabbed out my jar of corn, threw that in my jar. So it's just more like that. And then we do try to practice using it, because we're camping or, David took some of the freeze dried meals to Mexico with him. Well, if you don't know what you have to do to make this, and you're in a hurry to go to your meeting, or he's got to go do whatever he's got to do, if we're not practicing how to use this stuff, it's kind of one of those things.
Yeah. So
Um,
how do you use it? Tell me that.
you mean like this meal?
Yeah, like so there's different things. Obviously, if you're going to eat fruit, you can just eat it fresh, but you're holding up macaroni and cheese. So
Correct.
how would you've stored it in a Mylar.
Yep.
Say you go
So
camping, how would you make it so you could eat it and it's not just dried and crunchy?
yeah, so typically on this one I didn't write on it, but typically what I do, and I've got a video on how to reconstitute the stuff.
Okay.
So I have little trays that I fit onto my freeze dryer trays, and they're always done in 8 ounces and 1 pound servings. That's just my thing. If you only eat 4 ounces at a serving, you would figure out what you want to do. So you would weigh the tray, and let's do it for easy numbers, 1 pound, 1 pound. You
Mhm.
freeze dry it. When you bring it back out, you weigh how much that tray weighs again. So if it
Okay.
weighs, just for easy numbers, if it weighs half a pound, you would know that you need to add back half a pound of water to your,
Okay.
so all it is subtracting the difference.
So if you start with 1 pound of macaroni and cheese and you end up with a half a pound of freeze-dried macaroni and cheese, you're adding back 8 ounces of water to make it a pound again.
There you go. Yep.
Okay, that's pretty simple.
Yeah, that's
And
real,
that's
that's
and
real
it's
simple.
just hot
It's just
water
math.
and you let it sit. How long does it take for, say, macaroni and cheese? Would it be, I'm assuming it would be hot water, boiling water.
Hot water. It just depends. Some things take longer to bring back. Meats take a little bit longer sometimes to come back. I just did something the other day and I thought, wow, that should have came back quicker and it didn't. Oh, peas. But I used fresh frozen peas. So
Okay.
when you put them in there, that's the way they come out. So if you were to take peas out of your freezer, let them thaw on your counter, I like them good raw on salads like that, but they're not going to be like if you were to cook them and add butter to them. So when I put them into the rice, right, they were
Right.
still, they weren't, they were steamed not, or blanched, not cooked already. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Got that? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that things like that. But the macaroni and cheese, yeah, just be boiling water and then let it set for 5, 6 minutes.
Okay.
And then you
That
just
makes
chuck it. Yeah.
that makes sense to me with the macaroni and cheese. The meat, I'm wondering, like, how does that work with meat? So you do a steak. Is it a raw steak that you would do
It
in
can
a
be
freeze
either
dryer?
way. It could be
Okay.
either way. And so what we try to do when we're doing something like that is try to think, okay, if I'm going to use this for camping, do I want to mess with raw meat? Do I want to play around with it? Or do I want to do, let's say, top steak? If I grill a bunch of that, cut it into like strips, I can add a little bit of hot water to that, basically dump that in with some vegetables, and I have a complete meal. So I just try to figure out what do I want to do with it. Um, a lot of the stuff meats that I do, I try to do very lean meat because anything that has a lot of fat on it can go rancid quick.
I was wondering that. Okay.
Yeah. So like hamburger, I probably wouldn't freeze dry for longer term. I would do like chicken or turkey, something that's a little bit leaner.
Okay.
Or if I'm going to do a hamburger, I'm going to fry that up. I'm going to rinse it
Okay.
and then freeze dry it. So a lot of it is, I hate to say it, keep saying that, but it just depends.
No, it
Um,
makes sense. I mean, the more you cook, the more you understand, but
that's
it just depends.
it just depends. And like I'll give
Yeah.
a for instance of like this is roast beef. So this is just like roast beef that you find at the deli.
Oh,
And
okay. So like deli meat.
oh
Okay.
yeah, it does amazing. And
And
you can
did you roll it into rolls then?
I just did it. Yeah, but you can do
Okay.
it flat. The thing is it's pretty fragile, like really dry.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so if I were to try to, how do I get that into that little hole? So
Yeah.
I found, and again, it's just when you start playing with these things, you learn kind of the tricks and the tips. But what's nice about this is it's not something I would keep for a real long time, but I basically have to just spray a little bit of water in here, let it set, and this will come back like lunch meat. Or I
Really?
can
So you
just,
could just make a sandwich out of that and
yeah,
unroll it.
yeah,
Wow. That's cool.
yeah. Yeah, and so, or you can take that to camp and you can throw a little bit of gravy over it, and you've got hot roast beef sandwiches. And so it really depends. I
Okay.
do quite a bit of the chicken like that because that comes back good.
Have
Top
you ever
steak
had
does.
thing?
And what?
Sorry. Have you ever had something you did that you didn't like?
Oh yeah, I don't like tomato products,
Okay. Interesting.
but although I did hear somebody at the Indiana conference when we were there,
Yeah.
um, he said the same thing. So I think it might just be certain palettes. To me, when I freeze dry tomato products, it tastes like tomato paste to me because it's so
Oh,
concentrated.
yeah. That makes sense.
And I don't love, and I can't figure it out because I've done mastacholi, I've done sloppy joes was one of them. When it came back, I could taste that strong tomato flavor.
Interesting.
Yeah, and then when you freeze dry a tomato slice, I was thinking, oh, it'd be cool to use it like I was thinking, cut it up like croutons to have that crouton instead of having a carb, you could have like less carb
Right.
tomato cubes, and the texture is like I don't know. It's not. I don't like it. But the next person will have it and think it's the amazing thing. So I think it's just
Huh.
probably just
Have you
something.
tried different breeds of tomato, like a less acidic and a more sweet, and it's still
I've
you don't like it?
I've
Okay.
tried cherry
Interesting.
tomatoes. So I think it's just me
Okay.
because everybody else has loved it. Like I'll do sloppy joes because then you can just sloppy joes and
Oh
taco
yeah,
meat,
so
that kind of
easy.
stuff. Freeze dry 10 pounds at one time. I pull out a jar, throw some hot water in there, let it set,
Yeah.
and I've got dinner. And nobody knows. Nobody knows
And
what you're
that's
doing.
yeah.
And so
It's such a healthy fast food.
fast food, super fast. I mean, I want to sound kind of funny, but I've got a grandkid that loves chicken nuggets. Not, well, I'm sure McDonald's chicken nuggets, but I'll make them,
Way
bake
healthier,
them
yep.
up, and then I freeze them for him. So I've got freeze dried chicken nuggets that I can pull out if he needs a quick meal. And they come back amazing. You just let them soak. And it's kind of funny. You got to learn the learning curve to it. The breading on it gets kind of slimy, like it gets wet. But then
Okay.
you throw it in the air fryer and they come back amazing.
Okay.
So yeah,
So
it
what
just
would that take?
depends.
Like 10 minutes?
Um, no, they take a little bit longer. A lot of stuff too, like what was I just did the other night? Oh, cheese. I've got a video on reconstituting like shredded cheese. It again, I've done it because I've done it so much. You learn this does better if I do it the night before. Like if I want to have tacos tomorrow night or even tonight, I would have started the soaking process, reconstituting process in the morning. Some things come
Okay.
back really quick, and some things take a little bit longer.
Okay, that makes
Um,
sense.
Yeah,
Is it
like
because of the oils maybe in the cheese, do you think?
I don't know why it does, but
Okay.
yeah, I mean, I can get if I were to start if you get on YouTube, there's a video under the playlist for freeze drying, and it was reconstituting I think it's cheddar cheese.
For
And
your videos, right?
one of my videos, yeah, and
Yeah.
it comes back. I mean, you would not know the difference at all.
Okay. Have you tried
But
anything like feta?
feta we've done, yep. And to
Okay.
me, if you were to eat it like, freeze dried, it's pretty salty. But if you bring
Okay.
it back, like
It's
you
not.
reconstitute it, it's not as bad. Yeah.
Okay.
So I don't know. Like we've done goofy things, like we've tried pickles, we've tried olives. Um, it's just to see what it'll do.
Interesting. I have not been totally interested in getting a freeze dryer because the cost and then the
Yeah.
upkeep on them. And so that's, I guess, what's kind of steered me away. But man, the more I talk to people that have them, and especially you, I love this idea. Especially, I love canning jars, but you've got the glass and the weight. And I think if I lived somewhere like California or out west where they had earthquakes and stuff, freeze dryer would make total sense because you could store stuff in Mylar and not have to worry about it falling off shelves. And
Right.
if you camped a lot,
Yeah.
yeah, I can see totally why it would be used this way.
Well, and especially like with the amount of allergies that you have in your own family,
Yeah, yeah,
you know,
it's
and again, like for Paige, with being celiac. Not only
yeah,
that, I had my niece and nephew over for the weekend, and my grandson. So we're talking a 5-year-old and 2.5-year-olds, and we get going from point A to point B, and somebody needs a snack. And can you imagine what the inside of that vehicle would look like if I handed each child a banana? But if I give
right.
them, you know what I mean? And so,
True. Yeah, freeze dried fruit is so much easier to clean up.
yeah, and the nice thing about like the bananas, for instance, is you can take those bananas, put them in a Ziploc bag, rolling pin them, and that now becomes baby food. So
That's true too. Yeah.
my 10-month-old grandson, we can feed both kids with the same product.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's versatile too.
Right. And the nice thing but the thing is like with the strawberries, if I were to take and add water to these, they don't come back as like a strawberry. They would come back. It's a strawberry, but it'd be like a frozen strawberry. Like when you thaw
Okay.
a frozen strawberry,
Yeah,
that's
definitely
what you're
messier.
definitely messier. And so like these, I can just crush these up a little bit or break them up, throw them in muffins, into pancakes. Um, yeah, so really it just depends on what you want to do with them.
Okay, that makes sense.
Excuse me.
So we've talked about, the process, how you store them, how you're making your things.
Mhm.
What is the upkeep on one? Like you talked about oil and you talked about a pump. Like what is the upkeep and did you have to install like a special
Plug.
power cord plug in
Yeah.
your wall for it because it probably takes a little bit higher than just your regular everyday plug. But I'll get into that.
Yeah, not for the small harvest right and the medium. You have just a regular 20 amp breaker, 20 amp,
Okay.
whatever standard plug that plugs right into a standard plug.
Okay. So you
If
don't
you
need like
go
an
with,
appliance type one.
no, if you
Okay.
go with the large one, you do.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's got to have a dedicated plug, and the goofy plug on it, and then you got to have a
Okay. Yep.
dedicated breaker just for that one. Um, I can't remember what the large one makes. I don't know if it's 12 or 15 pounds. So
Okay. How
you
many,
just
do
have
you know how many trays that one holds? Because you said
uh,
yours holds, how many does yours hold?
mine holds 4. The new medium holds 5. So if you
Okay.
look at the inside of mine, and I've got on the YouTube, you can see all kinds of pictures. They've just shortened up the tray slots so they can now get one
Okay.
more
That
in.
makes
So I
sense.
think that's why they can get the extra 2 pounds or 2.5 pounds in there.
And how
I
much does the
don't.
small hold? 4?
I think it's 3 trays.
Three. Okay, so it's three, five, and then maybe what, seven or something like that.
Yeah, I can't remember. I
Okay.
need to update now that they've updated the machines. I need to kind of get
Yeah,
back on
yeah.
that. It used to be, um, there wasn't a significant, I mean, $500 or $600 is significant, but on the lines of how much food it produces, how much energy it uses, you still have to run it 36 hours, 36 to 40 hours, whatever it is. So to me, I always tell people, to me, it's worth it to save to get that next model, the next
Okay.
size up.
Okay.
Even for two people, if you got to run something for 36 or 40 hours, you might as well get an extra 5 pounds of food, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, but I mean, if your budget only allows for you to get a small unit, then you figure out what you need to do. But they
Okay.
do have Black Friday trays. I don't know if you want to touch a little bit on pricing or
Sure.
if you want to know
Sure.
about
I don't know
that.
if you wanted to.
Yeah,
I don't know
sure.
what, and I know that's kind of changing. I feel like because it's becoming a little bit more popular, supply and demand has probably made the prices come down a little bit, right?
Yeah, the right now, Harvest Right just ran a Black Friday deal. I think it's like for the medium, it was around $2,700.
Okay.
And that includes the trays, the impulse sealer, which is the little unit that will seal these bags up. You can
Okay.
buy those for like $30 separately, but they now include that with that. I think you get a starter pack of bags and some oxygen absorbers. You really don't need much more than that to get going,
Okay.
especially if you have your own jars.
Right.
So that's the basic. And then I think Harvest Right at one point did offer some dented, they knock a couple $100 off if you'll take a
Oh,
machine that's
okay.
got a
Yep.
scratch or, whatever on it. So I've had people go, oh my gosh, that's so much money. But here's the thing, even if you say this is going to last 5 years, mine's older than 5 years. So if you divide that, even if you say $3,000 by 60 months, I can't do the
Mhm.
math off the top of my head, but that's pennies a month. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I guess it just depends on what different people's priorities are.
Okay.
If you go out to eat 2 or 3 times a month
That
and
pays for itself. Yeah.
it pays for itself. So it really just depends. And I've had people say, oh, well, I could never afford that. And I've got a
Yeah.
gal that is recently divorced with kids. She was getting a little bit of state assistance for some food for the kids, and we were able to help her save. It took her a few years to save, but she
Right.
was able to save and buy her own freeze dryer.
Well, that is what. So I know everybody sees the freeze dried candy. I have seen so many people basically
Yep,
they're selling the freeze dried candy to pay for their freeze dryer.
yep, and they make good money on it.
Yeah, and then once they get it paid for, they kind of don't do it anymore. And
Right.
so I found that interesting. I've never had freeze dried candy because I'm not a big candy person, but I've heard it's really good.
I don't love it.
Okay.
I,
It's
I
funny
don't
because a
love
lot of
it.
people do love it.
I know they do, and there's a big market for it, and I don't get it, but that's
I hear,
okay. I don't
yeah,
care. That's okay.
I hear
Um,
Skittles are the thing.
but I do occasionally, like if I don't, I always have something that needs to go into the freeze dryer because I'll do like if we have something left over, I'll put it into a try it, container. So I've
Yeah.
always got something going. But if I do get something or like after the holidays, I'll find bags of candy on sale, Skittles or whatever. I'll do a load or two and I just put them up. Matter of
Yeah, because
fact, right,
there's always that candy on sale right after
that's right.
Christmas or yeah.
And matter of fact, before we had our last, we had a preparedness gathering, and one of the guys there was like, "Hey, I want to give my kids some Skittles for Christmas. Do you have any?" And I was like, "Yeah, I have some." He said, "I have some MREs to trade. Would you be willing to trade for MREs?" Well, almost all the MREs are loaded with flour of some kind
Yeah,
of flour.
gluten. Yeah, yeah.
I can't use them, but that was the deal that he offered up. And I'm not, if I can do a barter, I built that relationship, right?
Yeah.
And so I said, of course, I will barter you for those MREs because then I can take those MREs, trade them for something else that I need.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
That's
yeah.
cool.
So I do keep, and I'll do the little ice cream sandwiches. Again, I'll use those as like a bartering tool. Or if we have company, everybody's had astronaut ice cream sandwiches that you haven't seen them.
I've seen them. I've never had them because I've been a celiac for 20 years. So
Oh, yeah, that's right. Okay.
yeah.
But so we'll let people try those kind of things to kind of get them familiar. But really, when we have somebody that's never had it before, strawberries, corn is another big one because people know that taste of fresh corn out of your garden.
Oh yeah. Yummy.
So they understand. Yeah. And then as soon as you add a little water to that and a little bit of butter, and they can taste like you're eating a fresh,
There's
corn
nothing like
cob.
fresh corn. Yeah.
Right. And you can't get that even when you dehydrate the stuff, it doesn't taste the
No,
same.
it doesn't. No. And canned,
So,
definitely not.
right. I know, go back a little bit. You said something about the maintenance of it.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
there's the oilless, I don't remember which pump because he handles all that kind of an area, but he's got ours rigged up now where he runs it through another filter or something. So we only have to
Okay.
change it. There's a little window that's on the pump. And when it starts to change colors, then I know I don't know, he does that part of it. But
So you
uh,
you do so you change oil in it, or you're supposed to, and that just probably
yeah,
depends on how many hours, and
yep.
it's
How
okay.
many loads yeah, I got to double, I have to read up on the new models. It's
Okay.
hard. I probably shouldn't be saying too much about the older models because I know the newer models have a little bit different
Okay.
processor that they use. So I would just, yeah, I probably need to do a little bit more homework on that part before I can answer. I can give you a good
Right.
answer. But
But
for the
but
most
people
part,
do know there's oil that you do have to change.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And if when you get to that machine, I keep telling people, make sure you read the model or the manual because
Yeah.
they will walk you through how to do it.
So what kind of oil is it? Do you know? Is it like
I don't know. You can get it
car
on.
oil or
No, it's
okay, a
I can't.
specific oil? It's a
It,
specific oil that
but
okay.
you could go like to the ACO or not ACO, the auto store, and it's
Oh, okay, cool.
yeah, you can get it, and I think you can get it through Harvest Right too, or I'm sure there's a new company out, I think called Cube or something like that. And we were asked, how come we're not pursuing that kind of a thing? And I think for me, Harvest Right's been around for a long time. Harvest Right is working for me. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? So it's kind of one of those things. I would never diss another company or anything like that. Try it
Right.
if it's in your budget. Try it.
Okay.
You know.
So
But
is
yeah,
that the only maintenance then? Is that or
yeah,
is there
just the oil.
cleaning? Is there
I clean between.
is there seals you have to check? Any of that?
There is a seal on the door, and I just use alcohol. I clean the
Okay.
outside of it with the alcohol, and then I I've got a garden hose, like the insect sprayers that I keep a
Oh
little
yeah.
bit of peroxide water in it. So I kind of like hose off the inside in between.
Okay. Okay.
Um, if I'm doing like a breast milk, we don't do wheat in there anymore, so I don't have to worry about like total breakdown. But if I do anything like breast milk, that kind of stuff, it's a complete, I mean, it's everything gets torn apart, which is not bad because the inside unit pulls out and it's just like a little clip. You just unclip that. And I've got a commercial sink in my cake kitchen. So everything gets hosed down. Anything that can go, I've got a sanitizing dishwasher. All my trays go into that.
And so
Uh,
everything is dishwasher safe in there then. That's
the unit
trays.
that pulls out is not.
Okay.
But the trays can be, and then I use alcohol on the inside. I just spray it down with alcohol
Okay.
to the best way I can with that. And then so you can also use the inside of it as your vacuum chamber. I don't, only because so when that unit pulls out, you've got like a circle, like a
Hmm.
chamber, like
Kind
a
of like what your
chamber.
dryer looks like.
Yes, yeah, but
Okay.
smaller. So you can fit a bunch of these jars in there and you hit a button. I've never done it because I've got the
Oh,
vacuum sealer.
that's cool. So you can put all the jars in there and then it would just
Yep, yep,
okay. Okay.
yeah. But to me, those vacuum sealer parts are like $30. And
Yeah.
every time I hit start and stop, start and stop, start and stop, that's just more wear and tear on that.
Yeah.
So I just
Expensive piece of
choose,
equipment. Yeah.
there you go. So I just choose to use my vacuum sealer
Okay.
attachment.
Let it go
Um,
through that. Okay.
yeah. And then
I'm
other
trying
than
to think
that,
if there's any other questions I have. Is there anything else that you have like for
um,
upkeep?
not upkeep, no. A big thing is with the hose, when you discharge the hose, if anybody gets one, make sure the hose doesn't like you don't have a bucket full of water and leave that hose in there because when you release the valve, it sucks. So it could take water and pull it back into your machine. So that's just kind of like some things that can, kind of watch out for. The only other thing that is kind of would be something is like if you lose power and your machine turns off, there's no way to really go back in and say, well, at 20 hours, it turned off. So I can't just go, and that's what the old ones, I don't know if like the new ones would have that feature to say, okay, you can start it here at 20 hours. So I just hit restart and just restart the whole cycle over again.
It's a lot like canning. If you lose pressure, you start your timer completely back over again.
There you go. Yep. Okay. So like I said, I don't know if the new machines have a different, because like if you lose power, it just goes boop, boop.
Yeah.
It'd be nice if you could just go back to where you stopped and just let it continue. So that's the only other like really weird thing. One thing that you might be interesting for people to know is the cost to run the equipment.
That's what I was just going to ask you.
Okay, good. It's going to depend on your the cost to use your electricity.
Right.
It's not hard to figure that out if you know how much your kilowatt hours cost you, and then you would multiply that by like 35 hours. Then you would know what it cost you. We did a breakdown one time, and I think it's like $6 to $7 for one load.
Where you're at with your kilowatt hours.
Roughly, okay. Yeah. And again, that's the average load. Like if I do a load of spinach, it's done like in, I don't know, 15 hours or something. So that's going to cost me a lot less to do. So I think what we did is we did it like on an average, and $6, $7 for 10 pounds of food. That's cheap.
That sounds really affordable, especially if you're like growing. Like if you have a garden, that sounds crazy affordable.
Well, that's like a lot of the stuff that we're doing. Corn, I do. Peas, I purchase only because I can't grow enough peas. But the peaches, blackberries, blueberries, the other thing too that we do is, are you aware of flash foods?
Yes, so I stopped using it here just because so many people became aware of it. There's not we don't live in a big town to get it. Right. But yeah, you can talk about that. It's a really cool thing if people aren't aware of it.
Yeah, so flash foods, the grocery stores will, and it's like Kroger's, VG's, Meijer. I don't think Kroger. I know VG's and Meijer's at least down here. We're in the thumb of Michigan, but they'll put it on their app what's available, and you can just kind of search through what's going on sale. And a lot of it is they'll do these produce boxes for $5, and it could be different fruits, could be different vegetables, whatever. You might get a whole box of red peppers for $5. Well, when you price those out at the store, $1.69 for one pepper.
Yep.
So I just look at the boxes, and I would probably pick something that's like red, yellow, and orange peppers. $5 for that whole box? Heck yeah, I'm going to buy that. Garlic, whatever. So anyways, I will look for things like that I'm not growing and ways to put it up.
Yeah.
Otherwise, my daughter will stop at the grocery store to just run through to see what's on sale, what's on clearance. We also use an app that she and I can both see. So like she'll say, instead of calling me 10 times, like, Mom, do we need this? Mom, do we need that? She can just look and see where we're at with mushrooms. If we've got 5 pounds of mushrooms, we don't need any more.
Yeah.
So, but if it's on sale, we may pick up an extra package of mushrooms.
Is that the QR code? Is it the tote scan that you're using? Those are so nice.
Yeah.
I was looking for dried northern beans in my pantry storage the other day, and I'm like, I know they're here. And then I'm like, why am I not using my QR code thing? Yep. So I go into the app on my phone and I put in northern beans, and boop, it's in that box and in that room.
There you go.
I love it. It's amazing. And you can be at the grocery store and go, gosh, they have, like you said, mushrooms on sale. Do I have mushrooms? I can't remember. So you can go into the app and
that's right. Yep.
Yeah.
And what's nice about that app too is, I don't know if we have the same one, or is it the Scan Tote? Are you using that same app that I use?
Yeah, I have that one, and I just bought a different one just to see if I
like what I like about the Scan Tote one is you can take a picture of what it is.
Yep.
So like if I send my husband down, if I say, hey, can you go grab some sugar? If I got a bag of sugar and a bag of salt, he's not going to know the difference. I mean, I have them labeled, but it's nice that I can take a picture of it, And I can say, this is, when you open up that tote, this is what you're looking for.
Exactly. Yeah. I
You
like
know,
that too. You can do the picture because some of our brains just work differently. And
that's right.
usually husband and wife's brains work very differently. That's just
That's
how
right.
it is.
Right. Yeah. So that's kind of how we do what we can't grow. I'll try to find sales like that or hit the farmer's market, that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Amazing for the raw milk. We can't,
Yeah.
we're signed up to do a gallon a week and we're not going through it.
Right.
So I just portion it up into 8-ounce, little containers. Once those are frozen, I pop those out onto the tray. When it comes out of there, I measure it. And well, I already know 25 grams makes an 8-ounce cup. So I automatically know you just got to add 25 grams back and then I can make David a glass of milk.
So with that, are you skimming the milk then? Because you said something about fat. How does that work with like the raw milk? Because I know you're getting it, you're getting raw milk from a farm, so it probably has the
Yep.
cream in it.
Yeah, it has the cream. I just try to pull off as much as I can. There's
Okay.
still,
A
I
little,
mean,
yeah.
not much, but
Okay.
I'm not having when I bring it back, I'm not having any problems with it.
Okay, that's
Uh,
cool.
I did have one farm I got milk from, and the milk smelt cowy, like
They
almost
were
like goaty
I
almost.
could be wrong, but whenever I've had milk like that, I think from what I understand, but I don't have milk cows, but I've gotten a lot of raw milk in my day. They're eating their bedding or something like that.
Yeah, I don't know, but the
Yeah.
gal that I'm getting milk from now, her milk comes back amazing. It
It
freeze
might
dries.
be the same person. Well, I've gotten milk from somebody that we both know, and it's
Yeah,
to die for. I could drink that. I could drink my weight in milk a day if I had that out there. It would be really bad.
yeah. And what's kind of cool about the other thing, like with the freeze drying, that was nice to talk about because we're talking about milk is like my son-in-law was in the Navy,
Hmm.
and I could send him down little packages of milk. So
Okay.
he's consuming like raw milk and a little bit
Right.
nutritionally is, yeah, but I mean raw stuff. And the other thing that was kind of cool is um we would do our Zoom talks while he was down there. We kind of had like dinner together. We could make a pot of chili. I could send it down to him.
Oh,
So
that's
he could
fun.
literally plan to have chili with us or whatever. And so
That's really fun.
we called those taste, and I would just write on there, taste of home, love mom,
Oh,
or
that's
something like
fun.
that. So think about your family members that are out of town, or, you're sick and I want to send you a package of homemade chicken noodle soup. Like you made your noodles the other day, your gluten-free noodles. Imagine
Yeah.
if you had little heart-shaped cookie cutters
Right.
and then you freeze dried those little noodles into hearts and then you sent out get well chicken noodle soups, right? So
That's
it's just
cool.
a matter of being a little bit creative with the things that you're doing and, you know, having fun with it. You've got little kids, you could make ABC soup, freeze dry it, and then send it to them.
That's really cool. And I love that with the freeze dryer, similarly to the dehydrator, depending on the temperature you choose, you still have that raw option. So when you say raw milk, if people haven't bought raw milk before, raw milk is unprocessed. It's basically straight from the cow.
Yep.
And but if you dehydrated that in a dehydrator at a certain temperature, it's no longer raw. And so you could do that with any food. You could get raw food. It doesn't take away that raw quality because it's basically just freeze drying it. And
Yeah,
that's
nutritionally,
cool.
it loses a little bit, and there
Right.
is a heating and cooling and sucking the evaporation part of it off. I'm not exactly the technical part of that, but when I was researching the part about the breast milk, and with the raw milk too, I do drop my temperature down in there. I bring it. I think
Okay.
it's like I have to look at my notes, but like for the raw milk, yogurt, raw yogurt, call it raw yogurt,
Yeah.
raw
Yeah.
milk yogurt. Breast milk. What did I do? I dropped the temperature. But anyways, it was suggested through the breast milk group at what temperature to freeze dry it at. And so I just figured raw milk, breast milk, same thing, right?
Right. Yeah. You
So
don't want to cook breast milk. Yeah.
that's right. So that's why I dropped that temperature down for my raw milk. And then for my breast milk, raw milk, I used my thermal camera. I
Oh,
think
okay, cool.
so once it's done up, then I roll it all out so it becomes a powder. And then I take it attaches to my phone and I can kind of scan over it like this. And I can see in mine it turns blue. So that means I still have a little bit of a cold spot in there. So
Okay.
do you see what I'm saying? I don't know if I have a
Okay.
video on that or not. But anyways,
And
it's just
if it has a cold spot, then what?
then it goes back into the freeze dryer and I let it
Okay.
process longer.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's just, and again, I just want to make sure that, these mamas
Right.
are
Yeah.
pumping this milk and I want to make sure that they, nothing is ruined by having a cold spot. So, but probably
That's
not a lot of people are going to freeze dry breast milk, you know.
no, but they might. I mean,
Yeah.
it might be something that a mom homesteader decides that she wants to have on hand. And
Yeah.
I mean, there are still, what do you call it there are still women that pump for other babies
Yeah. Yeah.
out
Yeah.
there. I can't remember what they call it. Why is it
Yeah.
slipping my mind? But you know what I mean.
Yep. I gotcha.
A wet
Wet
nurse
nurse.
or
There you
something
go.
like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So is there anything else you want to add about freeze dryers before we talk about your channels and where people can go view all this information?
I think the biggest thing is that if you've ever been on the fence on whether you want one or you don't want one, they're worth it. They are way worth it. And if I could go back and redo it over again, I wish I would have gotten it back then.
Okay.
But you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
Kind of one of those things. Um, I used to can a lot, and now I
That's
mean,
me right now.
yeah,
Yeah.
I do, I mean, I'm not. I only can like our favorite things, like the canned chicken. We do like pork butt. A couple soups just to have something quick to grab, but other than that, jellies are about the only thing that I really can now. Pie filling,
I I do have one more question for you. Has
yes.
this helped you cut back on your need for freezer space?
No, because
Okay.
no, well, yes and no. But because like if I always have stuff ready to go. And like in the summertime, I can have bags of cherry tomatoes, throw those in the
Okay.
freezer. I don't have to process them until the wintertime.
Yeah,
And
that's what I'm
because,
doing right now. Yeah,
right, but because it puts off a little bit of heat, I want to wait to do that.
that makes
Or like
sense.
if I have leftover dinners, I have those little trays I told you that. So anything leftover gets put onto those. So I constantly have a shelf in the freezer of stuff that needs to be done.
Okay. Now, when you
So
say it puts out a little heat, how much heat do you think? Like 5 degrees maybe would it increase the temperature in a
oh,
room or
I don't know that difference. I'd have to
okay.
put a thermometer in, but I do notice a difference like when I have it running and I go downstairs.
Okay.
Like your basement, it just seems like it's a little bit warmer. And
Yep.
again, it's going to depend. Is it a big open room or is it a small
Right.
pantry
Yeah.
closet? So it just depends.
Do they
Um,
need speaking of that, do they need a certain amount of space around them? Like, could you put it, say, in your pantry closet?
I would think that you would just want to make sure, like on ours, we do have a little fan on it to help keep that motor cool.
Okay.
I don't know if that's a good question. I'd have to look that up.
Okay.
So, but I mean, I get people that are using it in, their small kitchens or some people use them in their garage in the summertime. So,
Okay.
I don't know, does that make it run hotter? I imagine it would, but I don't know, I don't know if it's an issue one way or the other. So the big thing that people say too is the noise. How noisy is it?
Yeah. How noisy is it?
David actually did a video on that. He compared
Oh,
our
okay.
dryer, a vacuum, and I think a box fan. Just so that,
Okay.
and he's got one of those little meters, I think, that says, what do they
How
call those
loud?
things?
Decibels, I think it is.
Decibels. There
Decibels.
you
Yeah.
go. I think he did it on his phone or something. And
Okay.
it wasn't as loud as what we thought it was going to be.
Okay.
So, and I like white noise. So to me, when I hear that running, it doesn't, and it's right outside my cake room. And
Okay.
it's not like a noise like when I'm working 8, 10 hours. It's not a noise that I'm going, God, that thing's so irritating. I wish it would just shut off, to me, it's
Okay.
almost like the dishwasher's running in the background. It's running, but it's not a big deal.
All right. That makes sense. Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
So, but if anybody has any questions, you talked about Facebook and that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
we're on all those platforms.
You guys
Um,
have a group on Facebook
yeah.
about this where you help people, right?
Yeah. And if
Okay.
anybody purchases the freeze dryer through our link,
Okay.
um, we offer up some consulting with that.
Okay.
Generally it's about an hour, but I'm not one that gets on there and goes, oh, you're at 59 seconds or minutes. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
Somebody has a question, I'm going to help them.
Okay.
But so we do offer, like you and I are talking right now, if that's needed, to kind of help people along because they get it and it's overwhelming. I mean, it's an
Yeah.
expensive piece of equipment and
Yeah.
sometimes you have questions and, it's nice to have somebody that you can actually talk to where it's not as easy to get through the customer service at Harvest Right as I think it should be. So having
Okay.
somebody that you can directly say, hey, what am I doing wrong here? Or, Jill's done some things that are more unique than the typical person would probably do.
Yes.
And so the one thing that she looked at, I'm like, that's not going to turn out. And it didn't, but it's a learning curve. You know what I
Okay.
mean? So the thing
Yeah.
is, I would suggest something unique like that. Don't do 10 or 12 pounds worth of it.
Right. Like you're doing your little tests. Yeah.
Exactly. Because a lot of the stuff, especially with them, if they're using organic pork or beef or something that's really pricey
Right.
and then
Yeah.
it doesn't turn out, then you're kind of bummed. So yeah. But yeah, we do offer that. And so far I haven't had anything that I couldn't help people with. We did have somebody order a machine that, something was wrong with it. And the
Oh.
guy was kind of upset. And I says, but here's the thing. You buy a TV, you buy a microwave, anything that you purchase, it's made by human beings and humans have errors. So let's get to the
Right.
bottom of it. Let's get it fixed. And all I did was send Harvest Right a message, said, hey, one of my customers, blah, blah, blah. They got taken care of. I believe
That's
they had to
cool.
ship him out. They had to ship him out something, but they
Okay.
took
Well,
care of
that's cool.
business.
That's
Yeah.
good to know that they take care of their customers then.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
okay. And
Yeah.
then you have that on Facebook, and then you also have, that's not the same group as your Dave and Sonya in Michigan, though.
Yeah, it is.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay. And then you have YouTube too, right?
Yeah. We have YouTube. He's got Rumble, Instagram.
Okay. Well, I will post all of those links in the show notes, and I will post your affiliate link in the show notes.
Okay.
And well, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah.
And
Thanks for
as
having us.
I always say at the end of my podcast, grow where you're planted.
There you go. Thank you.